AITJ for cutting my SIL out of my life, even if it upsets the family norms? Throwaway account. The cast, myself, 25, and my husband Tom, 27, his brother Fern, 30, his sister Margaret, 40, and her husband Corey, 37, their dad and their stepmom. This is going to be super long, so I apologize in advance, but there really is so much to get through. I married into the family about a year ago. They are all a pretty tight-knit bunch, but have been exceedingly welcoming and accepting towards me. It took a while for me to warm up because I'm always hesitant around new people, but I actually have a lot of fun with them and they have gone out of their way to make me feel like part of the family. I discovered early on that my husband's family has a unique way of handling conflict, and it's in sharp contrast to the way my own family handles disagreements. My family confronts issues head-on, sometimes ending in screaming matches if it gets heated enough, and all of us tend to speak up when something is bothering us or is fundamentally hurtful to someone. Tom's family is the opposite. They rarely address anything in real time, if at all. They typically whisper about it behind each other's backs, and usually just sit in tension for extended periods of time. It's been made clear to me that the only person in his family that is directly allowed to address an issue is their dad. Everyone else follows suit. This means if he isn't saying anything, no one else does, period. The issue in all of this? My husband's sister, Margaret. I'll give you a little bit of background. She has 4 kids with her husband Corey, and they have a really odd dynamic between the two of them. Margaret is the more domineering of the two, often speaking for the both of them while Corey just sort of sits there and nods along. Margaret is really prone to emotional outbursts over things that simply do not make any sense. There are so many instances of the chaos that Margaret has caused within the family that it would take an eternity to describe them all. I do have some notable ones though, repeatedly guilting people if they don't immediately drop everything to watch her 4 kids, screaming at the top of her lungs / causing a huge scene when there was tomatoes on her salad during a birthday party, regular complaining that no one helps her with anything. Her apartment, car, and kids have been almost exclusively funded by the rest of the family without any expectation of being paid back, and trash-talking her entire family publicly on social media. On a regular basis. Not once has anyone ever addressed these things with her, and it's continued to escalate over time. The biggest issue right now is the rift between Margaret and the stepmom, and how that is affecting the entire family, myself included. Stepmom married into the family about 4 years ago and is one of the kindest people I have ever met, point blank, period. Margaret publicly shames her at every family function and seems to specifically reach for the cruelest things you could say / do to someone. Margaret regularly asks stepmom to babysit, but freaks out when stepmom says no to any of her children. Margaret insists that this is toxic and abusive parenting. Stepmom can't have children, and Margaret has told her that she's thankful for this because it was God doing the world a favor. She's told stepmom that she was the reason her cousin K** led herself. She refuses to acknowledge her as a matriarchal figure and regularly says things like, "This is my dad's house, not yours. I'm not your daughter, you'd never be fit to be a mom, and IDK why my dad even married you." Margaret has gone as far as to compare stepmom to their dad's ex-wife, who stabbed him and ended up in prison. Stepmom has reached out multiple times to try and rectify / make peace with the situation, but Margaret escalates every time she does. All of this is so absurd for a woman of her age that I can't stand it. I have kept my mouth shut for years at this point out of respect for the family norms even through all of this, but last week I decided I'd had enough. Fern called me in tears to tell me that Margaret had ruined a dinner they went to that night, again. Margaret has regularly used Fern as an emotional punching bag, and him calling me in tears is a regular occurrence at this point. At dinner, Margaret had called him fat and told him she didn't want her kids around him anymore because they would think being fat is okay. For context, Fern has struggled with an eating disorder for most of his life. On the phone call, Fern basically spilled his guts. There's a family vacation to Italy every few years and apparently stepmom isn't going anymore because of Margaret. Fern also let me know that there has been talk of cutting Margaret out of the family for years, but their dad hasn't even started the conversation of this isn't okay yet, so none of them can say anything. Fern had tried to contact the husband, Corey, to see if there was something going on, but Corey refused to talk. I have always been friendly with Corey, he's a nice guy, and if you can get to him without Margaret in the room, he's actually really full of life and fun, so I called him myself. Corey told me that everyone is being so mean to Margaret and she's trying to break generational cycles. It sounded like he had a script in front of him the whole time and was almost word for word the same nonsense that Margaret says all the time. Margaret is a victim, everyone else is crazy, no one understands her. Etc. etc. After listening to him for a while, I told him I cared about him but that I was done with Margaret's BS. I blocked their numbers, their social media, and eliminated any other ways they had to contact me. This is a big no-no in this family. You don't confront it, you don't say anything, you just sit there and take it. I contacted Fern and stepmom and told them about my decision, and let them know that I wasn't going to show up to anything if Margaret was also going to be there. I told Tom and we had a whole conversation about it. Everyone is telling me they support me in my decision, but they have all also said some variation of I wish I could do that because I am in the same boat. The subsequent backlash from all of this is that although I am maintaining relationships with the rest of the family, Margaret is even worse at functions now. I don't have to see it, but I hear about it all the time and am starting to wonder if I made the wrong decision. I didn't want to make it worse for anyone, but I just couldn't watch it happen anymore without escalating things, myself. It really was getting to a point where I felt so stifled that I thought I might hit her out of frustration, which is why I chose to back out after all of this. The family still hasn't said anything to her, and my husband told me that they all have a role to play, but that I also kind of disrespected his dad by saying/doing this. Am I the jerk? TLDR. My SIL plays the victim a lot but is actually the aggressor most of the time, and I chose to end all contact, which is upsetting the rest of the family. Update 1. AITJ for cutting my SIL out of my life, even if it upsets the family norms? Wow, this blew up. I did not expect that. Before I give the most recent update, there are a ton of questions you guys had. I tried to answer you all individually, but here is more context. Tom is the only one in the dynamic that is low contact with Margaret. This happened very shortly after I entered the picture when I put my foot down over an incident that was absolutely ridiculous. Margaret had accused him of trying to kill her youngest after we lent her a carpet cleaner that smelled. I burn sage regularly. She was dead serious about it and did not let up and was like, wow, good to know you have no regard for human life. He broke down in tears for almost a week before I had to sit him down and tell him this is the most insane take ever. How the fuck is Sage going to kill a kid? You realize how nuts that is, right? Don't let her steamroll you like this. He went LC pretty immediately after that. Fern is a really soft-hearted person. It's been confirmed to me that growing up, Fern got it the worst from their bio mom. It's made him extra susceptible to Margaret's manipulations and guilt trips. They were really close when they were kids and Fern sometimes feels that without Margaret, his life will be empty. It causes him a lot of distress in both directions. Losing Margaret is a devastating thought to him. Staying around her causes him a lot of pain and generally puts him in a really dark place. He's struggling with it. We still talk regularly and have a very close friendship. Corey is a really soft-spoken guy. Super funny, friendly, and nice generally speaking. He only shifts gears when Margaret is present. The rest of the family has identified this as fear. I only cut him off because of the way Margaret uses him to gather information and spread drama. He deserves better, but I think we can all understand how scary it must be for him to even think about standing up to himself, considering that Margaret regularly threatens to take the kids away from someone, over something as small as not pouring her a glass of water once, roughly twice a month. Margaret has yet to actually follow through with this and genuinely only uses it as a form of control because of how effective it has been. It's like her Hail Mary pass. Mael really is a wonderful lady. She's really patient and understands how important Fael's kids are to him. She is trying her damnedest to not break up a family, and I think she genuinely wishes she could also stay out of it. Margaret has fully aimed everything at her at the moment, and it's put Mil in a really uncomfortable position. She's a pretty tough lady. I think she's just as bewildered as the rest of us and doesn't know what the fuck to do with the situation, because of how absolutely extreme it is. Fael is getting a lot of hate in the comments. While I am not necessarily disagreeing with the statement that he lacks a spine and is allowing it to happen, I also see the pain that this is causing him. While emotions aren't the easiest thing for him, I have to consider how absolutely triggering the whole thing is. I mean, the last time he was around this kind of person, she attempted to kill him. I know him to be an incredibly brave man, even if he doesn't always outwardly express his feelings or his opinions. It's got to be hard to juggle and wrap his head around this. He loves his wife, he loves his daughter. I agree that he should put an end to it and that it's been a long time coming, but I absolutely understand why it would be a huge hurdle for him to confront, both in real time and within himself. I tell him all the time that he's a good dad, because he is. He really is. I think in the face of a super domineering woman, after all he and the kids have been through, just really puts him in an emotional pickle. I can absolutely understand that. Biomom is a huge piece of shit. The family really doesn't talk about it much with what they have told me. I don't blame them. Biomom frequently told the kids that she hated them and wished they were never born. She used them as ammo to get her way with other relatives. She regularly made life a competition between herself and the 3 daughters. There are 2 more that are not in the picture that I have never met, and at times was violent with them. Fern and Biomom got into arguments on a regular basis. Fern attempted suicide several times really early in life because of how abusive the environment was. This was also the birth of his eating disorder issues, because Biomom regularly called him an ugly, useless waste of space. Tom has told me that he tried his best to stay out of the way, but that even he wasn't safe from the chaos. Oh yeah, and she regularly attacked Fael and eventually went to prison for attempted murder. Tom cut contact pretty immediately after that, followed by Margaret and Fael. Fern was the only one who tried to still have a relationship. The entire family has been absolutely NC with the biological mother and the other 2 daughters for over a decade. Now to the update. I spoke to Tom again last night about this whole thing. I mentioned that I posted on Reddit about this, but I told him I wasn't going to show him until things cooled down with the family. He was cool with that. I asked him a few clarifying questions, because I'm still super confused about how any of this got to the point that it has. He told me that no one is necessarily waiting on Dad to say something, but that everyone knows that he is the head of the family, so the NC thing wouldn't work unless Fael decided to do it as well. Pretty much either they all have to do it, or none of them can without seriously compromising the relationships that do remain. Margaret lords the kids over everyone. Apparently this is the biggest barrier for the family. Tom says he is virtually indifferent at this point because he only sees the kids at family functions, but for Fern, Fael, and Mil it's a lot different. Margaret is the only one of the siblings that has children, and she has regularly turned to the 3 of them for babysitting and financial support. They are all super attached to the kids and are really struggling with finding the lesser of 2 evils. I told him that I could understand that, but that I was still confused as to why everyone was okay with the automatic response to any barrier or boundary is you want see the kids again. It's not simple for anyone except me, I guess. I'll admit, I'm very fuck them kids in any situation like this. Children are not currency IMO, so whenever anyone has pulled this on me, I have not hesitated to be like okay bye. Tom let me know that he still has plans to talk to his father about this, but that he ultimately feels that he cannot control any of it, so he is doing his best to compromise. He doesn't like Margaret at all. He pretty much wants nothing to do with her or her kids at this point. He also doesn't want to abandon his family over this because he feels like Margaret wins in that situation. He is playing the fence, to be fair, but I can't expect more than that from him. I get it. I also talked to MIL yesterday. She's pretty confused because she comes from a family that confronts things heads on too. She has tried to talk to Margaret to squash things, but it goes more and more south when she does. I think this puts her between a rock and a hard place. She personally thinks that the only thing she did to offend Margaret is marry Fael. I gotta be honest, I agree, because Mael is so generous with her money, love, support, and attention that I find it very hard to believe that even a fraction of what Margaret is feeling is valid. Mil is a cool lady, and I have come to regard her as a very good person. Her current stance is no one is going to get through to her. I am not going to give my husband ultimatums, that's his daughter. It's his choice what he wants to do. For now, I am distancing myself, which is why I am choosing to not go to Italy with them. Myself, Fern and Tom are going over to Mil/Fael's house this Sunday. They were out of town on Mother's Day, so we rescheduled. Originally, Margaret and Corey were part of a group gift that I had fully planned and mapped out to give to Mom. However, very early in the process they started pulling some lightly shady shit, and I realized that this gift was going to be used to further manipulate the process. This was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. They have been completely cut out of the plan and are not welcome on Sunday. I feel bad that this means Corey also gets excluded. We all adore him, and the only thing he has done wrong is not challenge his wife on, but due to their proximity and the way Margaret uses him, he also had to be cut out of it. They have not contributed to the gifts because I purposely barred them from doing so. One of them is a very large collage with images of all the children. Margaret and Corey are nowhere on this collage, on purpose. I also doubled down as hard as I could, incorporating several other gifts with the kids' names, likenesses, etc. without including Margaret at all. You don't get to treat someone like absolute shit and then use my thoughtful idea to twist shit and use it against someone in the future. Sorry. If you wanted to be on it so badly, you should grow the F up. Maybe it's overkill, maybe it's mean. All I know is I've had enough, and I am in full support of Mael. Also, in full support of F around and find out, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, talk shit, get hit, and don't bite the hand that feeds you. Mael also let me know that she sent Margaret a letter in the mail. This is how bad the situation has gotten. Mil continues to try to rectify the situation, but Margaret blocks her at every turn in favor of being mean over shit that really doesn't matter in the bigger scheme of things. I'm pretty sure this double whammy of the gifts and letter will stir up an obscene amount of shit in the very near future. All that anyone would really need is an apology that takes full accountability without pointing fingers, making excuses, or playing the victim. That in itself would be a huge step for Margaret and a sign that she is open to growth. It hasn't happened yet, I doubt it ever will. I'll give more updates as it all unfolds. I anticipate this being a long process.